Talk to me.
And here we are with the latest episode of A Christian and a Muslim Walk Into a Studio. I am Bob Prater, the Christian side of A Christian and a Muslim. This is my friend
Emad Meerza, the Muslim on the Christian and a Muslim Walk Into a Studio.
Not just the Muslim, the pretty Muslim.
Listen, you know, I used to take offense to you calling me pretty. Okay, but then I realized there's this special man in our lives, okay, and I know you love him too. His name was Muhammad Ali. And Ali, right, greatest of all time, used to always say, what? I'm pretty.
I'm pretty. He didn't hide from it the way that you do. Apparently you're embracing.
So if Ali can say he's pretty and still be able to kick, you know, he was the toughest guy in the world. I'm not going to take it as an insult like I always feel every time you call me pretty. Hey, Ali was pretty. Maybe I am pretty. I'll go with it, you know? all good, Bob.
Let me say this, E. You are looking really good. You're looking fit.
Thanks, my friend.
My gosh. I mean, it's miraculous. I love it.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, I've been losing some weight, so it's good. It's definitely good. You know, when we first started this, I had gotten lean, and you were kind of chunky, if you recall, way back about almost 3.5 years ago.
You know that I don't flip you off on the air, right?
Wait, almost 4 years ago. I swear, you were a little chunk, man. And
okay, now listen, I just got a thing of. Hold on, will you stop talking?
That's my train of thought, dude. And then a little while later, a year later or so, or a year and a half later, I started putting the weight back on. And you got out there. You got that weight off. You started looking really good, pretty, and I got chunky.
Dumb.
So,
you know what?
Yeah, I'm trying to get back, almost back to that weight I was at 4 years ago.
Well, I'm really proud of you. But let me tell you this: on Facebook this morning, I see it pops up and says, happy friend-iversary, 5 years with this person that you've been friends on Facebook.
Okay.
It was you.
Is that, you know, I turned it on and it was talking about our friend-iversary and I didn't even look at it. I was trying to get something done. And I didn't know that was you.
I got sidetracked.
I was going to hit the delete button.
What did you say?
I'm just kidding. It's, you know what's funny? It's true, Bob. It's been, if we go back now, it's been near 5.5 years. It was a little less than 5.5 years when I first showed up on Don and Tina's show, and you were there. And, you know, I got to say, man, I give myself a pat on the back, okay, for agreeing to ever meet with you after that show. It shows that a language of healing, you know, I really have a pretty good spirit. I mean, I must have been a driving force to show you that, yeah. I remember my first thing I told you, why would I want to meet with you?
You did. Well, my gosh. Right. I mean, the 2 times I interviewed you on that show were both fairly contentious. The first one was because of me, and you know me well enough by now to know I'm just going to ask people what I think everybody wants to know. So, you know, it's what I did.
I'm gonna take you to task on that later in the show, and I'll explain why. And I think you'll understand.
But that second time, we had a professor from Cal State come on.
Yeah.
And that might be as wound up as I have ever seen you, because
I was more than angry. You know, I thought I was coming into a nice, friendly discussion, and before I can even get on air, you know, I had him calling us liars and all kinds of horrible things, and it wasn't good. You're right. If there was a time publicly that I was just raging, that was it. I was not a happy camper.
Both shows were really interesting. Boy, after that show with the Cal State professor, Don heard from Richard Bean, who was the publisher, president of Bakersfield, California. He was the top dog. So right. Publisher, I guess, is what you would call him. He got a hold of Don and he said, more shows like that, please.
I remember he telling me that. I remember he said he was thinking that he had the best, interest amongst the audience, or he wanted that kind of a show. I remember you guys telling me that. I was taken back. I'm thinking it's all this animus and anger and all that stuff. And it was like, I guess they were riveted.
They were, and the crazy thing is, speaking of the Californian, they're not in the media business anymore at all. They only do newspaper.
Yeah.
They only do print. But they came at us a little bit, Emad, when we first started doing this, wanting us to come because they knew what it could possibly mean for their audience to have those kinds of discussions. And we've had important discussions, and sometimes we get good traction and sometimes we don't. I think this one might get some traction because here we are, here we are in this world today, and we're watching things. I am seeing things, Emad, that I haven't seen since the 1960s. I'm a little bit older than you, so I have a very good memory of like 1968. A really good memory. I remember when the Black Panthers showed up in Chicago. I remember at I think the Democratic National Convention. I remember the race riots, the Watts, all of the things that have happened, and I never thought that I would see it again. And I don't know that this is worse than it was then, but it is certainly different. What's your take on where we are today?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, first of all, on us, I think the audience part is not a concern right now. I think consistency is a better thing for us. Long-term consistency. I think long-term this show will be appreciated better. If it just continues to grind it out, and then we continue to find better ways to communicate our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. So on that end, I think that our consistency probably down the road will be more meaningful than anything.
Well, this is episode number 318, I think.
Probably 40. But the point is that's probably going to be more relevant. If you think about things that are kind of have longevity, or have gotten to a point where they got a lot of attention. If you look back on them, you'll see that they've been doing it for a while.
Right.
Where they got picked up or somebody really started to appreciate it. I'm not going to worry about that. I think it's more that as long as we're having that conversation.
Yeah.
If you put our combined years together, we're about 120 years. I think you're about 75 of those. But anyway, just kidding. We really do. We have about 110, 120, maybe 120 years of life experience. But we come from different backgrounds. We both have traveled. We both have done a lot of engaging community. We both have done a lot of study.
Yep.
And I think that we have something to tell people, and there's some things that people can learn from us, and we can learn from talking to each other, and we can learn from people as well. But that aside, in regards the moment is a reckoning, in a lot of ways, but I also think the moment is just a reflection point on the state of affairs, the state of the mindset of folks, the state of forces. What are the forces that are affecting us? How are they affecting us? Are the negative ones permanent, or are they more likely to cause a lot more destruction, or can they be easily reversed? And can people's minds shift and change, and can people come together from the polarization? Those are intense questions. I don't know the answer to those particularly. I've seen both things happen, Bob. I've seen people that are very adamantly one way or the other appreciate a good word between us, or kind of a point of understanding between us, et cetera, between folks at different vantage points. And then I've seen a lot of vitriol and anger and tribalism and rage and just sheer hatred. And so it's left to be seen for me. I don't know. I know it's a very relevant point and a reckoning and all that, and a reflection point. I just don't know where it's going to go from here. Okay. That would be a summary, just a minor summary of my thought.
I would love to talk a little bit about the church and from my perspective and from your perspective, what I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the American Council of Islam out of Houston, is that what they're called? The American Islamic Council?
I don't know. Are we
Some,
which organ?
the main governing organization over Muslims in America.
Amjad, the Assembly of Muslim
So
Jurors
I'm
of
curious.
America. Yeah, no worries.
I want to break down some of the stuff I'm seeing from my side, from my people, and
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts of where the leaders of Islam, what are they saying about what's happening today?
Yes,
I think that's an important element to bring to our conversation today. So you can either go first or I can.
No, please go first. I'd like to hear from your side.
From my perspective, I have been very, I'm alternately very pleased with the response of the church, and then, very disheartened by head in the sand. In some cases, there are some leaders who have actively supported racist ideologies and encouraged people towards those racist ideologies as leaders, saying this is the right posture to take. I literally had a person yesterday on the phone say, "I just don't know why you always have to chase after black people." To me.
Wow.
To me, and I was like, hello, hello, because they said, "Reminder, you're white." And then the words that have followed all of us, all of our lives, "Who do you think you are?" It's okay. It's okay.
What about the faith position of that person? Do they believe themselves to be, highly religious or faithful?
Oh, sure. Of course. And on the right side of it. I see that's what's happened. I don't know if this has been manifest in Islam, but it's certainly manifest within Christianity, where there are these camps. And it's those often, tragically, that equate a flag with a cross. They think that they're the same, and there are many that I could name that are, and they would deny that. But their actions, you can't deny your actions. And so when we do what we do, I saw something this week. I woke up with a scripture in my mind, and I've been pondering how to even bring this to the table. I was going to blog about it, maybe write about it, but when I do, I'm going to get killed by my people. So I want to share it first here with you.
Okay.
There is a scripture, and I believe it's in Matthew 19, where Jesus encounters someone who has some status and tells him, "Sell all you have, give it to the poor, and come and follow me."
Very familiar with the chapter.
Yeah, the man walks away. And then Jesus turns to his disciples and said, "I'm going to tell you something. It's more difficult for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven."
Correct.
I've got a couple of thoughts here. First of all, when he's talking about kingdom of heaven, I don't think he's talking about the hereafter. I think he's talking about, because Jesus talked about on earth as it is in heaven. He talked about setting up his kingdom here as well. And so I think he's talking about the here and now, that it's very difficult for the rich, and I'm going to break that down real quick, to enter into the kingdom. They're part of the overall church, but I'm telling you, there are those, when you look at the Greek word for rich, and it shows up all the way through the New Testament, there are two meanings. One is wealth, money. But you don't hear Jesus saying, if you make 50,000 shekels or more, it's really difficult for you to come in. He's not talking about possessions here. He's talking about something that's in the heart, but beyond that, he's talking about those who were born with privilege and status. and they look at it and they walk in that privilege and status without any regard for people who don't have the same privilege and status. It is almost impossible for that man to enter the kingdom of heaven, Jesus says. When I saw that, everything flipped on its head for me, Emad, because it all makes sense, because people that look like me are not willing to make room at the table for people who look like you. Let's just be real. They're just not. And people who look like me can say, well, we love Emad, but they're not going to pull out the chair and let you in. There are people who look like me who say, we're for Black people. But at the same time, you will never hear the words Black Lives Matter come out of their mouths, because they're too tied up in the political system and what it might mean. There are people born into privilege and status. And it makes it very difficult for us to enter. I think the narrow gate is talking about the same thing, by the way, that there's a narrow gate and a wide gate. Again, the way I read that, I don't think that's talking about heaven. I don't think that's what that is at all. It's talking about on earth, there are going to be those who learn how to love the way that Jesus did, but most of them are going to go through the wide gate. Are you catching what I'm laying down?
I'm completely focused on every word you're saying.
All right. So that's what I'm thinking. And you know, I might talk, I'm on a Zoom session tonight with some folks back in Tennessee that are pretty famous. They've written a lot of worship songs for the church, and I don't even know how I got invited in, but I did. And I'm hoping it's a small group so that I can talk a little bit about this, because I think the church needs to hear that this isn't necessarily about money when he says rich. He's just not. He's talking about.
I don't disagree with you. Okay, I don't disagree with you there. If I can just ask or throw in something, the other side of it also is that Jesus made it clear, peace be upon him, that the poverty, those that are unprivileged, those that are weak, those that are oppressed, they'll have an easier road, to that same place.
For real.
So there's, we have to know that any type of privilege, status, wealth, power, that we have been given or, garnished in one way or the other can become a problem, for us. And I think you're in the spirit, definitely, of what I believe the Messiah, peace be upon him, was intending, in that idea that, if it inherited, just the idea of living in status, living in privilege, living in ease, can definitely become a barrier, to get to the door, to get through a door of righteousness. Whether it's his kingdom that he will rule in the second coming, when we don't say it that way, but we believe that Jesus will be at the head of the most beautiful time on earth. Okay,
I understand.
And at that point, only one way is going to be accepted from people, and it's certainly not going to be the way of arrogance.
It's not.
Yeah.
And I'm looking also at Luke 12, where Jesus very clearly just says, "To whom much is given, much is required."
Right. Exactly.
It's not enough for me to be born into this skin and then not speak for those who have had a harder road than me. That is completely anti-God. It's anti-Christ to not recognize that I've been given much. So my responsibility is to speak, because much is required of me, Emad.
Well, to show gratitude for what God has given you, you have to show humility. Okay. And humility is knowing that this is by God. I remember once telling a close relative, I said, do you understand you need to be grateful to God for this and that and all this, that privilege that you have, all this wealth that you have, all this whatever that you have? And he said to me, he goes, no, I'm the one that caused it. I'm the one that got out and did what I did, and I did this and I did that. I'm the one that should get the credit for it. Like, basically, it wasn't God. And I just looked at him like, you know, you breathe because of God. You live because of God. You see because of God. You hear because of God. Your parents fed you when you were a babe because of God. You know what I mean? He put mercy in their hearts. I mean, everything you have and will ever have, you owe to God. You need to be humble about that. And so that was a moment of, I was just asking for gratitude. Be grateful. Okay.
Right. Right.
I would add what you were saying about privilege, or what God, you know, for those that have been given much, there is much responsibility, right? What comes with that. We have the prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned 4 things. I don't want to switch over from what you were saying. I want you
No. Listen, I'm ready to have the other side of the discussion. So,
I just wanted to supplement it with this idea, and it's you know, your knowledge, your wealth, okay, your health, and your time.
right.
And those 4 things you'll be held in account for all those. So if God puts you in a position of wisdom and knowledge and understanding, if he gave you, you know, health, strength through health, if he gave you strength through wealth, and if he gave you, which at every level he's given us something, you know, and if he, of course, the time that he's given you on this earth, everything will be accountable with God. We're all going to account for the things and the blessings that he gave us, and, you know, what we did or didn't do with them, Bob. And so certainly if it was inherited, it was earned in some capacity, you were fortunate to get it, you were lucky to have it, you will have to use it in the way of God. You will have to use it with humility. You have to use it with caring and compassion. You have to use it to benefit his creation, you know, and not become arrogant about it. And one of the things I do see too much of in the world is just arrogance, just so much arrogance and pride in self, and pride in people's accomplishments. And then of course it extends on to their culture, and then it goes, and again, we can have a different discussion about that. But the idea is that a pride that would, you know, border on arrogance. And then of course, then it comes, you know, your skin color, race, or whatnot. And I think that is not in the spirit of the Bible. If you look back and see, you know this very well, the interaction in the Gospels with John the Baptist and the children of Israel that were the haughty, you know, not good, you know, the arrogant, basically the arrogant and not righteous children of Israel, who said, we're the sons of Abraham, right? That is, you know, they're talking about their bloodline. They're talking about who they descend from. They're talking about them particularly, specifically, that they have some righteous relationship with God based on their bloodline. And what did John the Baptist say to them about that? What was what was the response to that? I'm asking a question. The response about the stones. He said, from these very stones.
Right. Sorry, I had ice in my mouth.
I know. Sorry, I didn't. I caught you with an ice cube. He said, "From these very stones, God could raise sons of Abraham." Now we need to reflect on that, because that is an ethnic and racial and bloodline statement, as pure as gold. You know, 24-karat gold, to make us understand, right? That race has nothing to do with it. Skin color has nothing to do with it. Ethnicity has nothing to do with it. Bloodline has nothing to do with it. God could make greatness out of any individual he chooses, okay? And it could be a king who was, and like you said, literally was birthed into just great, you know, like material and power and all that. And he could be the most righteous man on the planet. God could turn him into the most righteous man on the planet. Or it could be his slave, you know, and that man could be the most righteous man on the planet. God could turn that very weak person, didn't have any power, controlled, et cetera, into the most righteous man on the planet. And so whether he was black, Arab, white, yellow, red, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That is what God does. And God has made, even though it may seem to us like it's an uneven playing field, and it is in a lot of ways, it is for us to react to it. God, you know, I posted something recently, and I think you saw it, but the idea was it's intentional. You know, God created us differently intentionally. God perfectly created this world imperfect, intentionally, so that we can better it, so that we can respond to it, so that we can do things that were righteous and honorable, and so that those that chose not to there'll be a witness against them if they choose to be arrogant and unrighteous and unfair and unjust because others are weaker, because others are this or others are that. And so God is testing us. And it's an intentional field that he's designed. This thing is intentional, and it's how you respond to it. Whether it's you have wealth in your pocket, power in your ability, strength in your arm, and your strength, or you have knowledge or whatever. How do you use it? Are you humbled by it? Are you appreciative of it? Are you grateful for it? Are you thoughtful of others? And I think I just cannot. There's no way I can make sense of my Creator if that wasn't the case.
That's right. That's good. And that all comes back to, again, we are responsible for the things we're given. And when you talk about, those who were born into wealth and whatnot, and think that it's because of something they did, I love that old saying that, the guy that was literally born on third base and is convinced he hit a triple.
Right. That's another, it's a very great lesson for us to understand.
Right. I mean, and then there's
be grateful. You don't
be grateful.
You don't have to feel blamed. You don't have to feel guilt. Just be grateful that that's where you're at, and then be mindful that someone else isn't on base. He's not even allowed to bat. He's not even allowed to bat.
Doesn't even get
up.
They're
asking him, "Hey, did you hit a home run?" Well, I'm not even allowed to bat. I can't even step up to the plate. Right. And so just know that some cannot step up to the plate, and so appreciate that. And I think we can transition here over to this idea, if you don't mind, of how we're responding. In this case, it's the idea of systemic racism and whatnot. But let me make a statement and see if you agree with me on this.
Sure.
Okay? Of any people, Bob, and I'm talking about Native Americans, Chinese, Arabs, Jews, Latinos, the list can go on and on, right? In the 400 or so year history and the 240 year history as a nation, in this history of America in the last 4 or 5 centuries, right? If there ever was a single group that we can say got the most brunt of the most oppression and injustice and literally was used and abused and oppressed and put in positions that not just 400 years ago or 300 years ago or 2 or 1, in positions where they had to climb out of the deepest holes to make something of themselves, or to climb out of the injustice that they endured and the sheer wickedness that the nation inflicted upon them at different times and different places and different stages. Not everybody, et cetera, collectively, but at different times, different places. But for the most part, systematically and consistently, it's the African American community. We cannot deny that. It would be foolish for us to think that community didn't bear the brunt of a lot of the bad of this nation, the bad qualities that we unfortunately, or the bad things that happened to us as a nation. Did I lose you? You're there
for just 1 second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And by the way, that's not to denigrate any other people group.
That's what I was going to get at. I just want to qualify the statement by saying the last part of it, which is to say that the Chinese people were abused at some point, in different ways. That they
were used as slave labor on the railroads.
Exactly. You know what I'm referring to. The Native Americans, of course, saw a lot of difficulty. Of course, we did build a great nation, but there were victims along the way. That tends to happen, unfortunately. Look at Palestine and what's happening with Israel. The Palestinians, if you look at them, they're like, what do you guys? You guys can thrilled all you want about Israel. We hate the reality of what happened to us. And they're right. That's true. And so
the thing about African Americans and Arab Americans is my people, evangelicals, the church, they literally think that they have a right to hate you.
And that's okay. I'm not talking about Arab Americans right now. What I really want to stay on is the idea that when we're talking about Black lives, okay, right. I'm not into the organization. I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter in the sense that we need to appreciate the struggles that they've had, the difficulty that they've had to endure, where they had to fight through to get to where they got to. We can look across the African American community. We can find criminals, and we can find gangs, and we can find drug addicts, and we can find thieves, and we can find folks that just don't pull up their bootstraps and whatever. And that's true. We can also look across the African American community and find brilliant individuals, wonderful people that are just accomplished and dear and godly and humble and wonderful and decent and kind and neighborly, and just the best qualities you can find in the world. You can find it in African American. You can look across the Caucasian, white America, and you can find folks that are just, bad people. They're racist, or they're just lazy, or they're mean, or they're criminals, or they're liars, or they're cheats, or whatever. And you could find brilliant, wonderful, amazing, humble, decent, great people. That's a reality. That's true. Okay.
It is.
So, and that's true for every demographic of humanity. But in the case of African Americans, specifically in the case of African Americans here in the United States, I'm not saying they didn't suffer in other places, but I'm just getting at this one idea. It is not only something real and tangible in the terms of systemically what it really created for them, slavery, and then Jim Crow, and then all the different segregation issues, and just the brutality that they've had to go through, but it's also the mental aspect of those that hate them for their color, right, and the mental aspect and what it does for them psychologically to continuously not be the same. I have two people. I don't want to keep talking without letting you say something, but let me get a chance to tell you about two individuals once you tell me what you think about what I just stated.
Well, tell me about the two individuals.
Well, one is someone I went to school with. I met in 1985 at USC. He was a USC football player. And we're friends today. He's one of my best friends. And I know he's always just wanted to do well and be accomplished, and he has, and he will, and he did. He had his failures, but he had his successes. But I always knew there was this notion that he knew that regardless of what he was able to accomplish and do, the color of his skin was always, he didn't sit and complain about it. It was these subtle things that I picked up on, because he's my intimate friend, that he just always felt like he was going to not be considered equal. Okay. That's the farthest thing from the truth. He is a man of all the right qualities, and his color has nothing to do with it. It's just, he's just a good, decent, hardworking, learned, decent man, period, end of story. The other is LeBron James. LeBron James, grew up with a single mother. Right. LeBron James grew up where, they needed food stamps and so on and so forth. Right. But his mother instilled in him a lot of wonderful qualities, and he's a family man. Keep
talking. I'm just gonna grab something real quick. Keep talking. Go
for it. Okay. So LeBron James, I think the reason LeBron James is so interesting for me, I just saw a documentary, and it was Shut Up and Dribble. The Laura Ingraham statement that she made when LeBron James was saying the things that he was saying about, what the president was doing, especially after Charlottesville. I mentioned recently to a mutual friend of ours, a conservative Calvinist preacher, that, it was another conservative friend of mine. I apologize.
All right.
Who was an army, who was a military officer and a physician and a decent man. But I told him that Charlottesville incident was a huge turning point. And you need to understand it from the vantage point of Jews, for example, when they heard Jews will not replace us by a bunch of young, strong, decent looking American white men. That was, that were just blurting it out for all the world to see in front of cameras and everything. That was a real turning point in our country. Especially, of course, the response we got from the White House about it was horrific, considering how hideous that was. It was also very nightmaric for the Jewish community because they understood what was happening. They understood this is something that is our worst nightmare. Okay, but the rationale with LeBron is that speaking out against something like that in a response by the White House, which was horrid. Okay, of course he should. Of course he should. What did he do? He became the absolute best in the entire world at his craft. Okay, if you become the best as a surgeon, you become the best as a race car driver. If you become the best as a basketball player, if you become the best, you're the best. I mean, it's like an Olympian. You know, are we ever white, black, whatever? Are we going to disrespect an Olympian who becomes the best in the world? No. And we're going to, you know, when Muhammad Ali spoke, knowing that he was the best at his craft, it was interesting to hear from him. And so, of course, you know, shut up and dribble was Fox News' Laura Ingram's response defending the president to these athletes and to LeBron James. And the sheer hate and animosity and vitriol that he received at the back end of that, I think was exemplified in just the facial expression that he showed on this documentary I saw the other day, which is to say that it just doesn't matter what we do. We're never going to be counted as equal. And I saw the hurt on his face, and I thought, dude, you're so far above the people that criticize you that way. You don't even think of them. They're not somebody you need to even let your mind go there. Don't let them put you down. Because what I meant is there's a mental abuse here, Bob. Right. And that African Americans are trying to climb out of, and white Americans who want to do the Floyd was a criminal. He had a criminal record. He was a drug. Trayvon Martin smoked marijuana. What you're doing is you're completely missing the point here that these African Americans have seen too much of this over their history. It's a repeated situation. And then what happens, they know the bigotry exists. They know the prejudice exists. They don't say everybody has it. They're not trying to blame all of you and your kids and everyone else, but it's a real thing for them. And it's not just a physical or material pain. It's a mental pain. And to watch a man like LeBron James and his stature and his family values and his community values, and the fact that he is just brilliant at his craft, athleticism beyond anything we can comprehend, a mind of a high school educated man who has the mental capacity today at 35 years old, you know, of just a very wise man. And to see him feel that pain and have that mental anguish that I am not equal to them hurts me, Bob.
No, I hear you. So I went and got this, you know, I sell books online. It's one of the ways that one of the 500 ways I make a living. And I knew I had a book over here because I bought it 8 or 9 years ago, and I've never been able to list it because I can't make up my mind whether I want to sell it or not. But it is LeBron James, Shooting Stars. And you open the thing up, and there it is, signed by LeBron. I found it at a thrift store for $1 down in LA.
Maybe I'm the one who has to buy it from you because he's becoming one of my old-time. he's becoming one of my old-time favorite athletes. So I'm going to have to look at this book and make you an offer.
Yeah. You're not making me no offer. I haven't sold it yet. I probably won't sell it. There's some things I think about the impact of Muhammad Ali, who said, I ain't got no quarrel with those Viet Cong. I ain't got no quarrel with them. And he went on to say, there ain't a single Viet Cong who has ever called me the N-word.
Right.
I got no quarrel with them.
And it's good you brought Ali up because this is where we should take this discussion right now, is to go back to how they responded to Ali and then look back at it in history and try to comprehend and understand what he was trying to say, right? And yes, still a lot of Americans don't appreciate him. You know, there's a group of Americans that still don't appreciate him for that. And I know I had a childhood friend whose father was a Navy man who didn't appreciate him for that. But yeah, I think that's the starting point as to not deal with the issue, deal with what he's saying, listen to him, he didn't live his life.
Said.
Right, but you didn't. This is the '60s, man. This is when segregation was okay. A black woman should not sit. What do you mean you're not going to sit at the back of the bus? What do you mean you're going to come into our restaurant and sit at this table? What do you mean you're going to use the bathroom we use? It was what do you mean, you little 10-year-old girl coming to a school of white people? You know, we're going to kill you. That's where people need to put their minds and hearts and understand that went on. You didn't go through that. I didn't go through that. You know, even as a Muslim American after 9/11, I didn't go through. Muslim Arab American after 9/11 with a beard this big, I didn't go through that. Nobody ever told me you can't come in this restaurant. Nobody ever told me you can't use this bathroom. Nobody ever told me I can't ride on this bus.
They did try to keep you out of Mimi's at one time.
Maybe, you know. But the point is, I've never, you know, I said to people, as I always, from the religious vantage point, Bob, when I dealt with my African American brothers, it was always, look, man, put that to the side. That's not our issue because we don't have that. You know, we don't have that. You're a man. You're a Muslim. You're accountable. Period. End of story. Like anybody else. And my friends loved me for that. And that wasn't me trying to belittle their struggle. It was just me saying, you're beyond it. Get on. Come on. We got Islam now. We got our faith. We're one brotherhood. Right. But the reality is, we need to know when those folks are hurting and trying to reach out to us to understand. Let's listen first. Let's respond to their grievance first. When they're healed and they're strong and they've seen that things have changed and they understand that you're with them and understand what they've gone through, then you could say to them, we're not all like that. You know, yes, we have to be fair. No, we shouldn't be, hurting people or whatever when we're angry. Unfortunately, this happened or that happened. But to make the issue right away about when a man is suffocated to death under a knee, about the destruction of property first, or about he might have had a criminal record, or, if I take I'll give you an example. If I take a young white 17-year-old man or boy or 19-year-old man who got himself in trouble, used to vandalize, maybe, stole things, stole a car, did some drugs, whatever, lived a life that wasn't all that honorable, and got busted for multiple times. And then he's walking down the street and, a gang of Arabs grab him and beat the hell out of him and put him on their knee and suffocate him and kill him. Or, a bunch of police officers do that. Are folks going to say, well, he had what is his parents going to say? My son, he got himself in trouble and this and that and the other. And if the cops found him strolling down the street and decided to take his life, that's what he deserved. They're not going to say that, Bob. They're not going to say that. They're going to say it was a murder, and the reality that anybody can watch what we watched on TV, or we're talking about Trayvon Martin, or we're talking about Eric Garner. You cannot look at those things and make excuses for that. You cannot do it. And if you do, you are guilty of something ominous.
Yeah, you're complicit. What irritates me is that there are people who are complicit by their silence, that just say, I'm just gonna try to stay neutral and stay out of this because that's the easiest path for me.
Well, but if you're their defense attorney for the oppressor, you're guilty on a whole nother level.
Well, that's
if
true.
You're stepping up as you're the defense attorney looking for all the, it's like a girl gets raped. Okay. She's a young girl. She's attractive. She wore a tight mini skirt. She goes into a party. She's flirting with guys, takes a couple of drinks. And then all of a sudden, she's in her bedroom upstairs against her will, and they're forcibly raping her. And then she goes to, she's willing to say that she was raped. What happens to her in court when the defense attorneys get at her?
Well, they're going to rip her apart and call her loose and slut and all the.
And why were you there in the first place? Why are you wearing those clothes? Why were you flirting with those men? Now, if white Americans who are defending that kind of, if they're going at, defending the police officers in that way and going at the African Americans that were killed in front of our eyes in that way, are they the same ones that are going to say that to that girl? Are they going to tell her, well, he should have raped you because you were in your miniskirt. You shouldn't have been flirting with him. Are they going to do that? If it's their daughter, for example, let's say it's their daughter that was flirting with some guys, and all of a sudden they decided, she was wearing a miniskirt, she was flirting with us, so we all raped her. We just took her in the room and raped her. Are they going to come at her that way? Are they going to come at her the way that defense attorney would come at her? Because that's what they all sound like. They all sound like a bunch of defense attorneys who are paid hitmen to try to make someone look bad who was the victim and make someone look good who was the perpetrator of the crime. That's what they look like to me. And they need to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, if that was their daughter, if that was their daughter, who a good defense attorney would rip apart. He would tear her to shreds. Doesn't matter if they gang raped her, multiple times. The bottom line, he's going to find. It's his job. Are they going to be that defense attorney is going to rip that poor girl apart? Or are they going to say that those men had no right to, or men had no right to rape her and harm her in that way and scar her for life and damage her, body and soul, just because she was wearing some clothing or laughed or teased or something like that, and then beg them not to do what they did to her, just like Floyd or Garner begged to please not, to allow them to breathe and
please
not die.
Don't kill me. Please don't kill me.
Do you get my point, though?
I do.
Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Perfect sense. I got two things, and then we're going to wrap up in about 5 minutes because we're trying to keep it a little bit shorter, right?
As you wish.
You're
the captain of the ship, partner.
We'll come back again next week, and maybe we'll have green screens by then and fancy stuff behind us. Who knows?
God willing.
Yeah. Here's my daughter was repeatedly molested at a church. And
I'm so sorry to know that.
Listen, I've talked openly about this. There's some of it that's even in the book. But the curious thing to me was when she, as an adult, finally stood up and filed a lawsuit against that denomination that I had been a part of, that I was licensed in, that I was a pastor in. They called me. And they were willing to trash me and my daughter to protect the organization, even though what happened was heinous. So if they're going to trash one of their own, of course they're going to trash folks who are not their own. And so, I look at this very through curious eyes of, but at the same time, I don't want to be jaded, but nothing surprises me. Like today, President Trump is meeting with Robert Morris, who is the pastor of Gateway Church in Dallas, 36,000 members, and several of Robert Morris's whatever. And they're talking about racial reconciliation. Racial reconciliation. You and I both know a woman named Arnita Taylor, who co-wrote A Language of Healing. She was the first African-American female to go on the staff of Gateway Church in Dallas, 36,000 members. Now, she hasn't been there for a minute. But I'm telling you, this is par for the course. Donald Trump's sitting down with another old white guy to talk about how to repair race relations in America. When the old white guy, who's the pastor of that church, could have invited in a voice that would have been loud and truthful about where we are. But we really don't want to hear these things because in the back of our minds, we know that it's true. We don't want to give up a seat at the table. The table has only so many chairs. We don't want to give up power. We think that if we empower you or we empower Black people, that somehow we're diminished in the midst of that. And it's just not necessarily the case. So
let me tell you a little story, an Islamic story that it's about arrogance and humility all in one. It's about not letting your anger get the better of you and then realizing. But it isn't that folks can't be reached. They can. It isn't that folks can't understand. They can, and God willing, they will. But we are one people with multiple races and ethnicities and languages and cultures. We're just one people. We have one Father, okay? And believe me, He loved all of His children regardless of how they came out. They came out darker or lighter, they came out shorter or taller, and they came out handsomer or uglier or whatever. Adam and Eve loved their children, and all of them. And we are their children, all of us. I don't care what skin color we are. I don't care where we're from. We all belong to the same family, whether we like it or not. And we just do. Islam, of course, as you know, I posted, how easily and without any confusion, 14 and a half centuries ago, how antithetical it was to any type of racism or bigotry or prejudice. But there's a story in which a very, prosperous and Arab man from a very, from a strong family and all that, had become Muslim. He'd become a follower of the Prophet Muhammad. And there was an African American who was a slave. An African slave who was one of the first Muslims. He was an amazing man. He was he was the first mu'adhdhins, callers, okay? And he was one of the Prophet's companions and disciples. They had an argument, Bob. They had a very strong argument as brothers in Islam after being guided and becoming followers of the Prophet and becoming two of, his initial companions. The Arab man from prestige and lineage and all that, right? And the African man from slavery, from being a slave and whatnot. In Islam, they're equal. So Abu Dhar, who was the Arab man, in anger, says to Bilal, he says, "You son of an African slave," he basically was like, calling someone the N-word, like it was a derogatory put down. The other companions heard him say it and were stunned when they heard that he had said that, right? Because that was not allowed in Islam. You didn't look at your brother in that way, right? And so they went and told the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that Abu Dhar had said this to Bilal in their argument in front of everybody to see, and on his rage. And the messenger, peace be upon him, was so disappointed, outraged, and just said, they called to it again. Da'oha, which is to say, they called to their days of ignorance, in which they had foolish pride in their tribe and in their Arabism and in their lineage. Okay, and so once the companions realized the Prophet was very angry, very upset about it, and equated Abu Dhar, the Arab, to an ignorant pagan, or ignorant mindset of the days that they had no knowledge, and that would be a bad thing. Now here's the moral of the story. The news gets back to the arrogant one, the one who made the racist statement against his brother. When he just realized, it's like you trying to tell somebody a biblical verse, a story of the Good Samaritan, or when the stones can become the children of Abraham. If your heart is really there, where it needs to be, those words are going to penetrate your heart. You're going to reflect. And you're going to make that change. You're going to say, I am wrong, or I was wrong. I harmed my brother. That was unjust. That was oppressive. So here's what Abu Dhar did. He realized, oh my God, did I just do that to my brother? Did I really just put him down because of how God created him? Right. Okay. And here's what he did, Bob. He went to Bilal in front of everyone and he said, my brother, I've oppressed you. I'm paraphrasing. Okay. I cannot remove this bad from me unless you step on my head. I'm going to put my head on the ground and you step on my head in front of all to see. Unless you do that, I cannot remove the shame that I have and put on myself. Okay. And Bilal looked at him as Abu Dhar wanted to put his head on the ground so that Bilal could, before he was an African slave, could put his foot on his head in front of all to see while his head is in the dirt to say, so that he can remove that sin. And Bilal looks at him and says, no, you're my brother. I forgive you. Okay. Wow. This is what I'm getting at is what? You can make the mistake. You can fall into the error. You can say, but he was this or he was that, or like your pastor friend said to you something about, a black person or a white person. The reality is, get aware, be awakened by the words of God, or be awakened by the wisdom that man can sometimes give you to just tell you, listen to what you're doing, or understand what you're not feeling, or understand how you've hurt somebody, or understand where that your heart is, and reflect on it and change, and be gracious, okay, and be humble, and ask for forgiveness, or at least try to understand. And I think that lesson for me, I tell that story often, because of the beauty of the brotherhood, both the one who did the harm and the one who received the harm, how they responded to one another. One said, step on my head. The other said, no, you're my brother. I forgive you. In other words, I know your heart now. I can see your remorse by what you did. It's enough for me, sufficient. And that's what we can do for each other. both the white and the black can do for each other, or the Arab or the non-Arab, or the Christian and the Muslim. We can do that for each other. We can tell each other when we hurt each other, and then we can forgive each other.
That's how it's supposed to work, you know. And I think you put a nice bow on, especially with the story of the African man, the former
Abu Bakr the Arab and Bilal the African.
My gosh, it's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
And so that puts a bow on it. I'll tell you, I'm reminded of, have you ever seen the show Songland, where they write songs on the air?
No, I've heard this. I've heard.
Okay,
that.
goofball, weirdo, watch that show.
Maybe I have. You know me, I'm forgetful.
There was an episode that was on last season, and it's a fairly new show. It just started last year. And you've got 3 really well-known songwriters, and then they always bring in a guest, and you're writing for that guest. And people sing their songs, and they pick a couple, and they go into a studio and try to really polish it up. And then the artist picks one song to be on an album. So Will.i.am from Black Eyed Peas was on last year.
Okay.
And you gotta love Black Eyed Peas. Come on. I got a feeling.
Hey man, I'm all for it.
It's gonna be a good night. Come on.
I love that song. Yeah, that's a great song.
Me too. So, dude came in with a song called "Be Nice." That's all it was, and it hit him so hard. He said, "That's just so simple." He said, "That's a saying in our family when we start going off the rails a little bit. Like, come on, be nice, be nice." And so they recorded this song. He chose that song as the main one. He actually was one of the ones that chose all 3 because he loved all of them. But he said, this is the one that's going to go. And it's simply called Be Nice. And it just means, hey, just be nice. Just be nice.
Love it.
And that's what we're talking about here. Be kind. Be kind to each other.
100% agree with you, man. Can you hear me? Because my son was telling me that my AirPods weren't connected. I don't know when they disconnected.
Still hearing you.
Okay. Well, yes. Be nice. I think we can add to that. Be humble. We can add to that. Be reflective.
Thank you.
Be understanding. It's not beneath you to try to hear things and understand things. I think both sides need to be understanding. We also need to look at the side that's not getting it and try to figure out why they're not getting it and address why they're not getting it and why they need to maybe, what help do they need to start to understand and get it. People's intentions sometimes are good and their actions don't look so good. And I think we got to give that, hopefully to the majority of people on both sides, our intentions are well. Some are not well-intended, Bob. Some are not well-intended.
But our actions need to line up with our intentions.
Absolutely. And I think there's you guys wrote about it and we've talked about it, and there is a language of understanding. There is hopefully a language of healing. There is a path to reconciliation, a reflection, and a better way. And if we listen to each other, I told you in the first part of the show, when you asked me if I wanted to say something, I said, well, no, I'm listening to every one of your words right now. And I was just sitting there listening to every one of your words. And it put me in a much better position to understand you because I was listening. I was valuing each word that was coming out of your mouth.
I appreciate that.
What is he saying? And we need to do that for one another, all of us. We need to do that for one another. I think if we do, open up our hearts a little bit, open up our minds, listen really well. We have eyes and ears, and for a reason. And I think we'd get a long way. We'd get a long way if we can do that. We'd get a long way. And God willing, we can start to do that.
Well, this was a good one. I appreciate you, Emad. I really do. And
appreciate you, my friend.
We'll come back and see. We'll come back and see if we can't bang another one out next week. And
God willing, that'd be good.
And maybe we'll be even more professional by then. We'll see. But in the meantime,
you just keep getting your message out to folks like you're doing. I know you
do the same.
Good sessions with folks. I'm hopefully ramping it up myself, but I like what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing locally. I appreciate what you're trying to do, nationally, and hopefully you'll continue to spread that heart of yours. I know sometimes we disagree on other things, and that's okay. But the things, I know your intentions are well. And in regards to this issue, which is the issue of justice and decency and equality between men and whatnot, I hope that the message that you guys are trying to get out there can get to a point where folks that call, they're willing to think that somebody that calls LeBron James, it tells LeBron James something like just shut up and dribble. They get to the point where they realize how racist and disgusting that is. Completely. And we also get to the point where folks like LeBron James or my friend from college, both wonderful men, can just understand that they aren't beneath anyone. They're for their accomplishments, for their righteousness, for their decency, for their morality and virtue and ethics. They can be the best of us, and nothing can stop them from being the best of us. As long as it's through righteousness and good deeds and good actions, they can be the best of us.
Love it. Do you remember Mark and Brian down in LA radio? The Mark and
Yes.
Brian show? Yeah. Brian, we almost did stuff with them. They're part of my Hollywood story. I'll tell you that another time. But Brian Phelps would always end every show with the same thing. He would say, "Be good humans." So let's go do that. And
yes.
Until the next time, Emad, it's been good chatting with you, and we'll be back hopefully next week.
Yes, always a pleasure, Bob. Thank you.